Good morning. I'm Leisha Grebinski. This is Saskatoon Morning on 94.1 FM. Well, welcome to our conversation with the candidates. Today you will hear from Don Acheson, Charlie Clark, and Rob Norris. We'll find out where they stand on the key issues just ahead of voting day, November 9th. This is our city, and it's time to decide who is the best person for the top job. So stay with us. This is Saskatoon Morning. Right now, let's check in with Danny Kerslake. Danny, good morning. What's making news?
Good morning. City Hall will be closed until noon today so that staff can get the support they need after a troubling incident. A 21-year-old man hurt himself with a knife in the lobby there yesterday. He is expected to recover. The city manager says staff members saw this happen and some may be deeply affected. Recoveries help keep the Saskatoon region's number of COVID-19 cases below 300. We saw 18 new cases yesterday. Our active case count now sits at 292.
Taking a look at the weather, it's currently -1 in our city, mostly clear. The wind chill making it feel like -6. Just a bit of light wind out of the southwest. Our high today, 15 degrees, mostly sunny, an overnight low of +2, and the temperatures in the mid-teens continue. Wednesday, a high of 15, Thursday, 14. Friday is when we see the temperature drop back down, and now Environment Canada is calling for some snow on the weekend, with temperatures on the minus side, -4 on Saturday, -8 on Sunday. So today is another day to enjoy here in Saskatoon with that high of 15 degrees and again -1 under a mostly clear sky. How's traffic today, Danny?
Looking okay, just starting to see some traffic develop on parts of Circle on the far west side and in the north part of Circle. Call us with reports anytime at 306-956-7444.
Thanks, Danny. You're listening to Saskatoon Morning on CBC Radio 1, 94.1 FM. The time now is 12 minutes after 7. Well, this is your official welcome to our 2020 Mayoral Forum. Advanced polling stations are now open and official voting day is Monday, November 9th. Yesterday, we heard from Mark Zilke, Carrie Tarasoff, and Zubair Sheikh. They shared their plans for Saskatoon. Today, we are at Glass and Lumber event venue on 20th Street, and we are joined by 3 more candidates. Don Acheson served as mayor between 2003 and 2016. Charlie Clark has served as mayor the last 4 years, and former Saskatchewan Party Cabinet Minister Rob Norris. Mr. Norris was in provincial government from 2007 until 2015. This forum is a chance to dig deep into issues that matter to all of us. There are several ways to watch and listen today. We are streaming this on our website, on the CBC News app, on Facebook, and on Twitter. And you're listening here on CBC Radio 1 and on the CBC Listen app. Now, the format we're following is this. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the first question uninterrupted, followed by a Q&A. Now, it's important to note that this is not a debate. It's meant to be a conversation, and this will help you get a better understanding of where the candidates stand and how they plan to execute their vision for this city. At the end of the day, this is about us and the city that we live in. These are the things that affect so many aspects of our lives. How we get to and from places safely, how your money should be spent on projects big and small, all within a global pandemic. I'm Leisha Grebinski, and I will be your host today. The clock is directly in front of the candidates, so each of you are able to keep track of the time. You will be given 1 minute to answer that first question, and then I will ask all of you follow-up questions. I ask that you respect your fellow candidates and everyone listening at home, so please do not interrupt each other. Wait for me to address you. Well, our first topic this morning is about the tone of the campaign. This weekend, candidate Rob Norris suggested in a social media post that fellow candidate Charlie Clark mistreated women on the Ramey Modern board. Clark struck back, saying Norris crossed a line. Norris has since apologized and has benched his campaign manager. Political discourse has become increasingly polarized. Why, even at the local level, are politics so negative? We're going to start this morning in alphabetical order. And so, Mr. Don Atchison, you will be first, followed by Charlie Clark, and then Rob Norris. Remember, you will be given 1 minute to answer, and then we will proceed with our Q&A. And so the question for you this morning is, with political discourse being increasingly negative, what will you do to change that tone? Mr. Atchison, you have 1 minute.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I don't believe in that. That's why I got into civic politics, not provincial or federal politics. This is about a community, and I can tell you right now, when you have discord like that, and after you're finished with an election, a community has to go through healing. And if you have these hard and difficult times to begin with, where everyone is fighting with each other, and I call it fighting because really that's what it is, and out there with all this negative campaigning, I just don't think it's of value to anyone. I think we should focus more on the virtues of what's been positive in our community and what we're going to do in the future. And so consequently, we've talked about why we're not interested in BRT, why we're not interested in the environment, that sort of thing. But talking about facts, not getting into personal ends of things, I just don't believe in that. I just think that we need to set those aside. And that's why I love civic politics. It shouldn't be political in the sense of political parties. It shouldn't be from the left nor the right. I'm an independent. I think that's what serves the community best in the end.
Mr. Atchison, thank you so much. Mr. Clark, I'll repeat the question. With political discourse becoming increasingly negative, what will you do to change that tone? You have 1 minute.
One of the things that really motivates me about being a politician and being a leader in society today is I think people are really looking for hope. People are really looking for leaders that are going to tell them that by working together, by bringing the community together, we can have a better future. And that by being part of a team and solving problems as a team, we're going to be stronger than by being divided and divisive. And people are really watching what's going on in the United States. And it makes people concerned about the future. And we're seeing the political gridlock that's being created by that kind of nasty, negative, divisive politics. Yesterday, my son Simon came up to me and he asked me about the post that had happened. And he said that in high school, his friends are talking about this issue right now. The tone at the top does really matter. And I believe it's very important to have a positive, forward-focused, unifying approach that finds the good in people and draws on the strengths of the community, and that's what citizens are looking for right now, more than ever.
Mr. Clark, thank you. Mr. Norris, I'll repeat the question. With political discourse being increasingly negative, what will you do to change that tone? You have 1 minute.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to reiterate my regret to Mr. Clark. I think what's important is for us to focus on the key public policy issues that are challenging Saskatoon. It's one thing to hear rhetoric that relates to and words that relate to unifying people, but it's another to go door to door, to listen to people and actually see how those consequences of the public policy decisions that have been made over the course of several years. What happens when someone can't afford their property taxes as they increase by 3.7 or 3.9? What happens when they're having trouble with water bills? That's a time for us to listen. What I think's happening is actually people are looking for clear choices, clear options to understand what's the best path forward for what, well, the ancients might call a good life. What I'm putting forward is the opportunity to have a more affordable Saskatoon, a more prosperous Saskatoon, and a safer Saskatoon.
Okay. Mr. Norris, thank you. We're now going to open it up to a few follow-up questions that I will pose to you. So, Mr. Norris, I want to start with you. In light of what happened on the weekend, how do you plan to go forward?
Well, I'll just reiterate my regret to Mr. Clark. We're moving forward just as we have throughout our campaign, focusing on those issues that are most important to the people of Saskatoon, as we've heard them since June. People are concerned about property taxes. They're concerned about crime and safety. Record murders in Saskatoon last year, record arsons this year. Sadly, murders they're almost at the same pace this year.
But have you reflected on your own tone throughout this campaign? And are you thinking about how you've come across, and do you plan to change directions in your approach to things at all?
I'm going to continue to speak and give voice to working people, to seniors, small and medium-sized business owners that are raising questions and looking for very, very clear choices. What we've tried to do is make sure that we're presenting cases as clearly, as positively as possible. Some of them are contentious. These are conflicting visions and views, and we're going to continue to work right till the final buzzer to make sure that people's voices are heard.
Mr. Clark, how do you plan to deal with future contentious issues that could potentially divide a city?
Yeah, I absolutely believe in our city's ability to take on contentious issues and to not be divided, and that's what I've been focused on. You know, there's been a lot of divisive and contentious understandings about how to address climate change. What we've done is focused on bringing the business community and the environmental community together to come up with things like building retrofit plans, strategies for solar development in the community to move forward. But what we're hearing, unfortunately, in this campaign is very misleading statements about, for example, the city having a carbon tax, which is absolutely untrue. And what that kind of rhetoric does is it stops people from being able to develop solutions and move forward. It holds you back, stuck in a place where there's no movement because of fear and a misrepresentation of facts. I think it's critical right now that we recognize some of these issues are tough, but we can't get gridlocked with misleading information and fear as a way of dealing with it.
Mr. Atchison, I want to bring you into the conversation. How would you bring the city together after voters decide who they want to be mayor? How would you bring the city together?
Well, first of all, I think that what we've just finished hearing over the past few days is why a lot of people don't get involved in politics at any level at all. And personally, what we need to do afterwards is the mayor's role is to get out and visit with the community as a whole, be there with each and every one to bring people back together again. And that means talking to all the different parties that are out there, because everyone has different points of view. But we have, for the next 4 years, we need to work together, and we need to be able to put out our long-term vision of where the community is, to sit down and have those discussions. And I think that's really critical for everyone. This idea of just saying, well, it's my way or the highway, I think if you look at what we were able to accomplish when I was the mayor, to be able to put, for example, 3 bridges together in our community over basically a 10-year period was unheard of. To be able to work with, for example, the federal and provincial governments, we brought in hundreds of millions of dollars into our community that normally wouldn't be here. So you have to be able to work with everyone, and that includes federal, provincial, and at the local level.
Okay. Mr. Atchison, thank you. Thank you to you, Mr. Clark, and thank you to you, Mr. Norris. 22 minutes now after 7 o'clock.
This is Saskatoon Morning. We're coming to you live from downtown Saskatoon. Today is your chance to get to know 3 more candidates running for mayor of this city. You can stream us on the CBC Listen app, watch it all live on our CBC Saskatoon Facebook page, or keep listening right here on 94.1 FM.
Well, we now move to major projects. Council approved the Library Board's request to borrow money so it can finance the construction of a new downtown branch. The cost to you, the Saskatoon taxpayer, $4 a year, according to the library CEO. The library is expected to open in 2026. Meanwhile, early conversations are happening about a downtown arena. Where will it go? And who will pay for it? And so this is the question this morning. Do you support plans for a new downtown library that was approved by the previous mayor and council? You each have 1 minute to respond, and Mr. Clark, I'll start with you.
Citizens need to be 100% clear that any proposal to shelve the library project at this point is going to cost them more money. And the reality of that is because council has made a decision. I agreed that when we debated it, that the cost was high and that we thought that it should be, that the project could be done at a lower amount. And that is why we approved a $20 million reduced amount for them to borrow on the debt limit. But now that that decision has been made and the library has spent tens of millions of dollars, any mayor that wants to come in and try and rescind the decision is going to bring a world of hurt to the city. Lawsuits, additional costs. The library could be able to sue for tens of millions of dollars against city council and bog the city down in complete gridlock. Whether you like the project or not is no longer the discussion. It's whether you want to have the extra costs of lawsuits and charges as a result. And we're in the middle of a pandemic. What a distraction from the real work that needs to be done to address the challenges we're facing right now.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Norris, do you support plans for a new downtown library that was approved by the previous mayor and council? You have 1 minute.
No, Leisha, we're not talking about $4. We're talking about $67.5 million of debt financed, put on the shoulders of hardworking people in Saskatoon. The Cities Act highlights that there are some key functions of city leaders. Part of that is the wise stewardship. In the blink of an eye, City Council missed an opportunity to talk about a multi-use facility. That was mandated in some of the reports that the city actually has. So we're not talking about a few dollars. We need to shelve this project. We need to ask critical questions like, how can Halifax, Guelph, Kitchener have libraries for between $50 and $70 million? And Saskatoon, well, taxpayers are being asked to go almost double that. So the answer is, we've got to shelve this project. We need to make sure that we get those dollars back. They haven't been spent yet. The city clerk actually has that question outstanding.
Mr. Norris?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's 1 minute. I will now move to Mr. Atchison. Mr. Atchison, this is the question. Do you support plans for a new downtown library that was approved by the previous mayor and council?
Well, first of all, we don't even know whether or not we can do anything about it, and that shows a lack of experience because, first of all, the city solicitor and the city clerk need to even rule if the motion can be rescinded at all. The next thing is about the $67.5 million. What could be done about that? I think there's a lot of other avenues because I had been working on this particular project myself previously. For example, it could be co-developed. It could be either a lease. Just down the street here is Station 20 that is leased from the city of Saskatoon. Stonebridge is a leased facility too. It could be a lease to purchase. You could also have a residential tower on top or a commercial tower on top. You could have commercial retail on the main floor. You could have part of the library on the main floor itself, and then the second and third floors could be used for that. Why wasn't it in a design build? And I can tell you right now, the council that's in place today missed the golden opportunity on September the 20th to ask the city solicitor and the city clerk that question. Can the motion be rescinded? We wouldn't be having the discussion if we'd had the leadership that in fact should have done that.
Mr. Atchison, I do have some follow-up questions for all three of you, but I'll start with you. You raised the point about the conversations with the city solicitor. At this point, where council is at right now, is it possible at all to look at what Could the library plans be changed at all at this point? And would you support conversations that would take people back to the drawing board to accomplish some of the things that you've brought up this morning?
Well, first of all, if the city's, there's the big if there right off the bat, and the question is if you can rescind the motion. That's the first thing. Because if you can't rescind the motion, what happens then? Are you going to violate the contract that's been put into place? Those are critical things. Governments need to follow rules and regulations. Governments are a monopoly, and they just can't pick and choose what they want, and you can't have retroactive legislation in the municipal level. So that's the first thing we need to understand. The next thing is I think we really need to go back to the drawing board if it's possible, and it's a big if, okay, at this time. So we need to know whether or not we can do that. And if we can, the things I just finished talking about, commercial, retail, residential, towers, that sort of thing, design, build, all those things should be on the table at this time.
Okay, Mr. Norris, why have you taken such a strong stance against this library project?
You know, I'm all in favor of libraries. We know how important they are for communities. This is about, well, frankly, unsustainable spending. Saskatoon today has a debt that's more than $350 million, $15 million deficit. What we see is that there is not a value proposition here that citizens are getting behind. 2/3 of the people of Saskatoon have real reservations about this project.
Where did you get that number, 2/3?
That's from polls that I've undertaken. So what I'm looking at is to make sure we're reflecting the views of the people of Saskatoon, those that are going to, well, really foot the bill. So this is crucial for us. Come hell or high water, this has to be stopped. The spending that we've seen from the past two administrations has got to stop. People need tax relief. They need a break.
Mr. Clark, why is right now the right time for the library to proceed with this project?
Because not proceeding will cost citizens more money. I have to tell citizens that we should not even be bogging down this campaign at this very important time in the city on an issue that has already been dealt with where the train has left the station. We are at a crucial time right now to deal with challenging issues in our community. The library has a sustainable plan, as has been stated, and I want every citizen to understand, it's less than $5 a year per household to move forward with this. It will create 1,000 construction jobs at a time when interest rates are low and our companies are looking for work right now in our community. Delaying it will cost more money, and it will cost legal bills back to the community. And this will create a community hub in our city to make sure everybody, especially those who are poor in our community, have access to technology, which is the role that libraries play.
Okay.
We need to move forward as a city right now and deal with the issues in front of us, not behind us.
Mr. Clark, thank you. You're listening to a special edition of Saskatoon Morning. We are having a conversation this morning with three candidates, Don Aitchison, Charlie Clark, Rob Norris. The time right now is 7:30. Danny Kerslake is here with the news.
Thank you, Leisha, and good morning. The world is watching the U.S. as voters go to the polls. More on this in a few minutes. First, the local election. As we vote in a pandemic, advance polls are pretty busy. In the first 3 days, about 10,000 people voted for mayor, council, and the school boards. The city's first ever drive-through advance poll also did well, with about 600 voters. There is some confusion here on the mail-in ballots. Can you fold it? One part of the mail-in says no, another section says yes. City officials have now clarified that yes, you can fold your mail-in ballot. Siobhan Brennan has been waiting for that answer. The problem is it's now too late for her vote to make it on time through the post. Brennan will have to drop her ballot off at the election office.
That's a bit of an oversight, I would say, on the part of the elections office, which is unfortunate. I'm sure they're doing their very best, but hopefully everyone's votes still are able to be counted.
The civic election is on Monday. This morning, we are learning more about the three big-name candidates running for mayor. It's part two of Saskatoon Morning's conversation with the candidates. Today, it's Don Aitchison, Charlie Clark, and Rob Norris. The CBC's Guy Kenville is here in the newsroom listening closely to what these three are saying. Guy, what stands out for you so far?
Well, Danny, Leisha didn't waste any time getting to the nitty-gritty this morning. She began by asking candidates about the negative tone of the campaign at times. This, of course, is one day after Norris said he regretted a negative campaign attack ad against Clark that accused him of having mistreated female board members at Ramey Modern. This morning, Norris reiterated his regret over that ad. Clark said that his own son came to him to ask about the story and that his friends at school had asked about it too and said that it's a distraction from the real issues. And the third candidate, Don Aitchison, said that this whole discourse over the ad is the reason a lot of people don't tune in to politics in the first place. But there's lots more to come. Really eager to hear what else the candidates have to say. Back to you.
Thank you, Guy. That is the CBC's Guy Kenville live in our newsroom. In Dixville Notch, New Hampshire, the first votes have been cast in the U.S. presidential election.
Polls are closed. Time to count.
As the tradition goes, this tiny village along the Canada-U.S. border is among the first to cast ballots just after midnight. Democratic candidate Joe Biden won all 5 of those votes. U.S. voting sites opened this morning. The final election results might not be known for some time to come. At 7:33, it is clear in the city, -1. This is Saskatoon Morning. Traffic this morning looking okay. No trouble spots you need to avoid just yet. But if you're seeing something on the roads, let us know. 306-956-7444. A coroner's inquest heard that an inmate used heroin in the jail bathroom before he died. 43-year-old Donald Blair was found unresponsive in his cell at the Saskatoon Correctional Centre 2 years ago. A fellow inmate testified they used heroin and that drugs were always available there. A nurse testified they administered CPR and naloxone. Coroner's counsel Robin Ritter says he intends to call nearly a dozen witnesses this week.
Oh, the purpose of a coroner's inquest is to basically identify what happened and to come up with, for a jury to come up with recommendations as to what can be done to avoid similar deaths in the future.
Inquests are called for anyone who dies in custody of anything other than natural causes. A man is in hospital after an incident in the lobby of City Hall. A man pulled out a knife and hurt himself before anyone could stop him. The 21-year-old is expected to recover, but it's left city staff shaken. The city manager says staff members saw this happen. Trained counselors will be there today to meet with staff. City Hall will not open until noon today. There are 74 new cases of COVID-19 in the province, according to the latest report. It's the 10th straight day with at least 50 new cases. This city is still the most active region in the province with 292 cases out of the 858. The number of hospitalizations province-wide is up to 34. As of today, the city is making mask use mandatory for many of its employees. Workers will have to wear a mask unless they're outside and 2 meters apart from people or in a private office. Bus drivers are exempt because they're behind a special barrier. The move comes after a growing number of active COVID-19 cases. Members of the public will still not need to wear a mask, although it is strongly recommended. Drinking water has been restored at RUH and the Children's Hospital. Water advisories were in effect since last Thursday after a water main break. Yesterday, the health authority declared that drinking water is back on. There is still an advisory in place for Ellis Hall. That's an older wing that is connected to RUH. I'm Danny Kerslake. Those are the city's top news stories for this hour. We have news anytime at cbc.ca/Saskatoon.
Thanks very much, Danny. I'm Leisha Grebinski. This is Saskatoon Morning. We are live today from Glass and Lumber event venue on 20th Street for a special Mayoral Forum. We're streaming live on the CBC Listen app, here on CBC Radio 1, 94.1 FM. You can also watch this forum right now on our CBC Saskatoon website, on Facebook and Twitter, and on the CBC News app. And after we're done, it will be available. So if you're busy getting ready for work this morning and you missed part of it, you'll be able to find it on our website later today. Again, that's cbc.ca/Saskatoon. Now, before we get to our candidates and some of the big topics that we're covering, let's talk about the weather. It's a pretty good looking weather forecast. -1 right now, mostly clear. The wind chill making it feel just like -6. The high today, yet again, 15 degrees under a mostly sunny sky. An overnight low of 2. Again, tomorrow 15, Thursday 14. Friday is when we see the temperature start to drop down to a high of 2. And the weekend, yes, Environment Canada is calling for snow. This is what everybody's talking about. We've got these wonderful days ahead of us here. And then by the weekend, it could look white in Saskatoon with temperatures on the minus side. Saturday, -4, Sunday, -8. So again, on the minus side right now, sitting at -1, mostly clear. But again, 15 degrees, mostly sunny. The time now is 23 minutes before 8 o'clock. Well, we are live this morning from Glass and Lumber event venue on 20th Street for our Mayoral Forum. And with us today is Don Atchison, Charlie Clark, and Rob Norris. The format we're following is this. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the first question uninterrupted, followed by a Q&A. Let's get to our next question. Feeling safe in our city's downtown is important to all of us. This campaign, concerns have been raised about just how safe our city centre is. Issues of poverty, mental health, and addiction are in sharp focus because of the pandemic. And so our question is this. Some people have raised issues about downtown Saskatoon feeling unsafe. Is it unsafe? And what would you do to make people feel safe? You have 1 minute, Mr. Norris.
Yeah, I think this is a real issue, and it spreads well beyond downtown. Importantly, what we've said is there are 3 or 4 pieces to this. I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with the police. I think it's time for an effective lobby. We haven't seen that thus far for additional resources for police and crisis teams. That's making sure that there's more support, social services working far more closely with our police, offering more options for the police, more resources, and making sure those who are most vulnerable have additional services. The Second piece is moving forward with the pilot project. Again, the current mayor was unable to secure sufficient resources on the safe consumption site. And so this pilot project is very, very important. It's running 3 research initiatives with the University of Saskatchewan. And it's important for us to get that data. Finally, I'm suggesting that it's time for a blue ribbon panel. The era of the lighthouse has come to an end. Blue ribbon panel, let's get the best advice.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Mr. Atchison, I will ask you. Some people have raised issues about downtown Saskatoon feeling unsafe. Is it unsafe? And what would you do to make people feel safe? 1 minute.
First of all, it's more perception is reality. And if people don't feel safe, it's not safe for them. We've had, for example, stabbings downtown. We've had muggings. We've had people having their purses stolen, whatever the case might be. I think some of the things we need to look at, and we need to send a clear message out there, is we in fact need to have more officers on the street. It's interesting that we've had the police chief announce that he's going to put more patrols out there right now, up until including the election time, but that's kind of the end of it at this particular point. But I think we need really to talk about having a new home also for the lighthouse. And the new home for the lighthouse is not in downtown Saskatoon. It's to find a new home for them, to be able to divide the different categories up. That there's too many all congregated together, the numbers are too large, and we need to be able to split them up so that they in fact can have a reasonable life. I can tell you right now, when you lock the doors at 9 a.m. in the morning and you can't come back till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Mother Nature calls. And it's not a good thing for anyone in our community, and we need to stop that, and we need to find a new home.
Mr. Atchison, thank you. Mr. Clark, is downtown Saskatoon unsafe? What would you do to make people feel safe? 1 minute.
I have real concerns about the situation of safety in our community, and I have been working hard on these issues for the last 4 years out of a recognition that the system is currently failing our residents, it's failing our downtown, it's failing people who need mental health and addiction services. And this is happening right across Western Canada, but what we are doing in Saskatoon is unique, and we're making significant and important progress in addressing these system challenges. We can come up with a solution for the homelessness and for the shelters and the lighthouse that is both better for clients and people who need those services and for downtown businesses. The Sawai'i-Totan partnership that we have developed with the Tribal Council and Ministry of Social Services, police, and the interagency Safe Community Action Alliance response is an important paradigm-shifting step in that direction. But we need strong leadership that builds trust and partnerships to be able to see that through. And that is the type of leadership that I bring to these issues and that I want to bring for the next 4 years.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Some follow-up questions now. Let's talk more specifically about the lighthouse. All 3 of you have raised it. It is a privately run facility that receives some money from the provincial government. Mr. Clark, I'll start with you. What is your opinion, or what are your thoughts on where the lighthouse is located? What changes would you like to see at the lighthouse, and how, as mayor, would you try and affect change?
The challenge with the lighthouse is that they've taken on a huge number of additional services to deal with some of these growing challenges in our community, as we've seen mental health and addictions impact so many people and so many lives, but also as the population has grown. And so we've been working directly with the lighthouse, and there's been a recognition by everybody around the table that it's time to come up with a new model and to relocate some of those services. We created a task force, again, that has the Ministry of Social Services directly on it, as well as the Indigenous, the Saskatoon Tribal Council, and many community partners to come up with a new model so that we can build that next step solution and recognize that right now there's too much concentration of activity on that site. It's very possible, and my goal is that by next summer we will have that next step in place, but the city can't do it alone. We need to do it in partnership with people who actually have responsibility for the lighthouse.
Mr. Norris, if you were to become mayor, what changes would you like to see at the lighthouse, and how would you try and affect change as mayor?
Well, as part of my track record, I was part of a government that put forward an initiative called Sweet Dreams, philanthropic investment, EGADs, and the government backstopping it. It's got a success rate of over 90%. It's here, it's working with mums and kids, keeping families together. And what we see is it's just been given a Governor General's Award for Social Innovation. We know how to do really, really great projects here, especially focusing on those who are most vulnerable. What we need to do is focus on making sure that we have the best program options for the best program outcomes.
But what do you want to see at the lighthouse?
Well, what I want to see specifically is a blue ribbon panel. A lot of people have a lot of opinions.
What is a blue ribbon panel?
So I want experts to come. What we need is it's going to move to a decentralized model. What we've seen is really the amalgamation of too many services, and it's simply moving at too slow a pace. Just the other night, I was downtown. There are people sitting outside. It's freezing cold. It's not working. So what we're going to see is a decentralized model based on best practices. Some of them are right here in Saskatoon, and we're going to provide better programming options and outcomes.
Mr. Atchison, you have talked also about moving aspects of the lighthouse to different locations in the city. So how, as mayor, would you do that? Where do you want those services to be? How could it be better serving people in Saskatoon?
Well, first of all, we don't need any more studies, but the provincial government needs to be congratulated for putting the $100,000 in to doing a study right now along with the City of Saskatoon, with the Saskatoon Tribal Council. But that being aside, the City of Saskatoon Police Service, they take people that are intoxicated to that location too right now. We've got to stop doing that. We've got to break it down into the different categories that are there. We need to find a place that they, in fact, can do gardening. They can, in fact, have pets. They can have their own space for themselves, that it's there 24 hours a day. The things that are going on there right now are just not right. They're overwhelmed by the amount of work that's being put on them. The homelessness are put there. The men and women that are there, they have different wants and different needs. The people that are intoxicated have different needs. Those that are mentally challenged along the way have different needs. And they're all being brought together in one location, and they just can't handle it all there. And so we need to be able to break it up. And I'm talking about having tiny homes, that sort of thing, where people can have a pet of their own so they can, in fact, feel as if someone is caring for them.
And how, as mayor, would you make that happen?
Well, the provincial government, first of all, it's their responsibility on the social services sides to be dealing with a lot of this. But the City of Saskatoon can certainly do its part too. First of all, again, I'll tell you that the police service needs to in fact, stop taking the people that are intoxicated there to start with right off the bat. The next thing is working with the provincial government to find a location that is suitable for everyone. And I've had discussions in the past few months with those from the Lighthouse along with the provincial government. And I think there's a location that can be found that will satisfy the needs of everyone.
Okay. Mr. Atchison, Mr. Clark, Mr. Norris, thank you so much. It is now 14 minutes before 8 o'clock.
This is Saskatoon Morning. We're coming to you live from downtown Saskatoon. Today is your chance to get to know 3 more candidates running for mayor of this city. You can stream us on the CBC Listen app, watch it all live on our CBC Saskatoon Facebook page, or keep listening right here on 94.1 FM.
Well, we have seen a stark increase of COVID-19 cases in Saskatoon in recent weeks. And so our question for you this morning on this topic is, what could you, as mayor, do to help businesses and organizations struggling with the pandemic? Each candidate has 1 minute, and Mr. Atchison, we will start with you. So again, what could you do as mayor to help businesses and organizations struggling with the pandemic?
Well, it's not only businesses, it's families also that are struggling with this right now. It's making their commitments. First of all, on the business tax side of things, some businesses are paying anywhere from $50,000 to $65,000 a month in property tax. What we need to do on top of that is we need to be able to find out a way that they are able to make those payments. And it's not going to be over a 1-year period. This is going to have to extend over a 3 to 10-year period, I believe, is what's going to happen. We've been told already that this isn't going to end until about 2023. And so there's large concerns there on how, in fact, we're going to keep people in business. The City of Saskatoon saying that tax enforcement, if you haven't paid your taxes, we're going to take your building from you. Well, first of all, I don't think the city should be in the hotel industry. I don't think it should be in the restaurant industry. I don't think it should be in retail or any of those businesses at all. We need to make sure that people have the confidence in the city, so they need certainty and stability that we're going to be able to work out proper payment schedules for them along the way. Those are really critical in our community. And having more studies and this sort of thing just aren't the answer. It's a solution that's required between everyone.
Mr. Atchison, thank you. Mr. Clark, what could you, as mayor, do to help businesses and organizations struggling with the pandemic? You have 1 minute.
As soon as the pandemic hit, I used the relationships and trust that I had built with the business community to sit down and make sure that we were engaged and talking directly about what we needed to all do to adapt and change. One of the biggest messages that I heard is we have to be flexible, we have to be innovative, and we have to have nimble regulation to deal with this. And we very quickly acted also to have a property tax and utility deferral program in place. We've seen a high level of people who have fulfilled those obligations, but there are certain businesses and certain sectors that are facing significant ongoing challenges. And as Mr. Atchison said, especially in the hospitality industry, I believe we need to continue to talk, listen, engage, and be adaptive to provide the relief in terms of payment programs and so on that is needed. But what I've also proposed is the free parking on Saturdays and the Take It Outside fund to be able to get people into and animating business improvement districts, getting people shopping at a store with a door, and support our local economy.
Mr. Clark, thank you. Mr. Norris, what could you as mayor do to help businesses and organizations struggling with the pandemic? You have 1 minute.
Yeah, I've put forward, I think, one of the most kind of nimble responses. I've said, let's take $5 million. There's a $15 million fund for vehicle replacement for the city of Saskatoon. Let's take a third of that. Let's put it towards arts, culture, sports, and recreational organizations. They'll have an option of whether they'll take a check or whether they'll be able to take property tax relief. What's crucial here is we need to make sure these very organizations, we can think about curling rinks, we can think about various arts organizations and others, the very fabric of Saskatoon, we need to help them. And so if that means we don't buy street sweepers for a specific year, if it means that we don't have as many Ford F-150s for a couple of years, that's what families are having to do. That's what the city needs to do. We need to make sure that these core organizations for us in our city actually are able to be sustained.
Mr. Clark, I do want to ask a few follow-up questions, and I want to switch gears just slightly to talk about mandatory masks, because some cities have implemented...
I was hoping for some... Okay, go ahead. Clarification on what we just heard, if it's possible at some point.
Let's talk right now about mandatory masks. Sure. So some cities have implemented mandatory mask policies in public indoor spaces. What would it take for, and I'm going to ask this of all of you, but what would it take for you to move in that direction? What would it take to implement mandatory masks in the city of Saskatoon in public indoor spaces?
So what we've learned so far is that we've done very well to work directly with the medical health officials from the provincial government, and council's direction has been very clear that we will work with we're not experts in public health ourselves, and so we need to be working directly with provincial experts on that to make these decisions. I know there's significant concern growing about the cases rising in our city, and that affecting businesses, that affecting people's lives. I've been in touch with Minister Jim Ryder just in the last several days to say if and whatever steps we need to take, we will support you as a province. We will support the implementation and communication with residents.
But you would be waiting from direction from the Saskatchewan Health Authority.
Yes, that is, I believe, the way we need to proceed with this, because I am not the medical health expert, and if we start picking and choosing which measures we take as a city, does that mean that the city also starts weighing in on class sizes and other things? I mean, we're either taking direction from the province or we're not.
Mr. Norris, do you agree with that, or what would it take for you to implement a mandatory mask policy in public indoor spaces if you were to become mayor?
Well, the first thing that was obvious, and it was in advance of the school year, I called for mandatory masks on buses. And I did that weeks before council. I want to applaud council. They finally got to the decision. The reason for this is, obviously safety for our drivers and safety for our riders, but also we were talking about the price of PPE unit costs. So of course, we have to follow the leadership of Dr. Shahab of the Provincial Health Authority. I've also suggested it's time for a medical advisor, health advisor, to work directly with the mayor to offer council timely advice, especially as we see our numbers rising, sadly. So this is about following Dr. Shahab, having medical advice ready at the mayor's level and at council, and making sure that as we see this evolve, we're also asking the appropriate questions and taking the appropriate measures.
Mr. Atchison, what are your thoughts on this? What would it take for you to implement a mandatory mask policy in Saskatoon in public indoor spaces?
I think, first of all, we need to follow the provincial government guidelines once again. They're the experts, we're not. We've heard that others have said that they want to, in fact, have a health officer for Saskatoon. I don't think that that's a reasonable expectation. We can't afford one. On top of it, I think the province is doing a tremendous job in that particular area right now, and we need to follow their guidelines is what we need to do. The other part about the previous question I just want to quickly bounce onto is the $15 million. In fact, it's not $15 million, it's $7.9 million, so I don't know where this $15 million is coming from.
Just clarify for me where that number is coming from again. I think listeners might need a reminder
of
what dollar
that was
figure
the number on the vehicle and equipment replacement that we said it was $15 million. One of the other candidates said that. And in fact, it's $7.9 million this year, $8.1 million next year. So it's not $15 million. So we need to make sure we have those facts straight too.
Okay, since we're back to that, Charlie Clark, did you want to comment on that?
I think I heard Mr. Norris say that he wants to write checks to organizations using, I believe, taxpayer dollars as part of this, even because the property tax rebate he proposed is kind of irrelevant because most organizations don't own property, so that wouldn't work. But then this is the first I've heard the idea that actually the city writing checks to organizations in response to your question about how to help the business community. And I just think we need to understand what exactly is being proposed, and because that would be a very unusual precedent for the city to take.
Okay, I want to ask one more question in regards to COVID. Are we doing enough in this pandemic to help our city's vulnerable population? Mr. Norris, I'll start with you.
The answer is homelessness is a real issue, and we've seen this issue in and around as it relates to the lighthouse. I think we need to take some very, very creative measures about ensuring that there are safe places for people to stay, those who are most vulnerable during COVID. We need to make sure that we're addressing the rising numbers in the broader population, but we need to take some additional steps.
And what would those additional steps be?
You know, I've talked about we should be having conversations with the reserve units in Saskatoon to see what options there are for short-term housing to make sure that people have safe, affordable, and really opportunities to have space adequate during this COVID time. We're going to have to take very, very special measures here right now.
Mr. Clark, are we doing enough in this pandemic to help our city's vulnerable population?
Well, we have seen, building on the work that had happened with the Safe Community Action Alliance to create a more coordinated response among many community organizations. As soon as the pandemic hit, I was so impressed with the way that community organizations stepped up. Many of them had to close their doors and all rallied to create a hub at the White Buffalo Youth Lodge in order to have an intake and have a coordinated way of helping to get people the help they needed. But this is still a very urgent issue in our community. One of the things that we still lack is a clear strategy for hotels and to have some people in supports. We don't need to call in the reserves and the military. We just need to use some of the existing hotels that have space available and make sure that people who need help but who have been exposed to COVID or even tested positive can isolate safely in a hotel and not end up in our shelter system. We've seen some cases in the Lighthouse. We need to make sure that's as coordinated as possible.
Okay, Mr. Atchison, we only have about 30 seconds, but from your point of view, are we doing enough in this pandemic to help our city's vulnerable population?
I think we need to look at more because you just finished talking the weather just a few seconds ago that snow's coming this weekend. Right now, so what are we going to be doing? So we need to address this as quickly as possible. I do have suggested in the past that we need to look at using more hotels, motels along the way. We need to be able to get people off the street. And the other critical part is to have separation there too. Putting a group of people all together in one area, in a confined area, is going to cause us nothing but problems in the end. So we've got to move very quickly on this particular spot right now in order to help everyone in the city. Because if it spreads like they say it does, we have to make sure that everyone is safe. And starting with one group is fine, but we've got to make sure that everyone is safe in the end.
Mr. Atchison, thank you. Mr. Clark, thank you. Mr. Norris, thank you. We're coming up to 2 minutes now before 8. You are listening to a special edition of Saskatoon Morning, our conversation with 3 of the mayoral candidates. Right now, though, let's check in with Danny Kerslake. Danny, what's making news today?
City Hall will be closed until noon today so that staff can get the support they need after a troubling incident. A 21-year-old man hurt himself with a knife in the lobby there yesterday. He is expected to recover. The city manager says staff members saw this happen and some may be deeply affected. Recoveries help keep the Saskatoon region's number of COVID-19 cases below 300. We saw 18 new cases yesterday. Our active case count now sits at 292. Drinking water has been restored at RUH in the Children's Hospital. Water advisories were issued last Thursday after a water main break. Yesterday, the health authority declared the water is now back on. Quickly with traffic this morning, we are seeing some slow-moving traffic as you head west across the bridge on the north part of Circle. That stretches up onto Avenue C as well. Also a little bit slow as you make your way south on Circle toward 22nd. Traffic reports anytime to 306-956-7444.
Thanks very much, Danny. Taking a look outside, it's -1, mostly clear. The wind chill making it feel like -4. Our high today is 15 degrees. Mostly sunny today with an overnight low of 2. The temperatures in the mid-teens continue. Wednesday, 15. Thursday, 14. Friday, a high of just 2 degrees. So that's where we start to see the temperature drop. Snow on the weekend and temperatures on the minus side. I'm Leisha Grebinski. This is Saskatoon Morning. We are live today from Glass and Lumber event venue on 20th Street for a special mayoral forum. We're streaming live on the CBC Listen app on 94.1 FM, and you can watch us too on the CBC Saskatoon website, Facebook, Twitter, and on the CBC News app. Stay with us. World Report is next. Good morning. I'm Leisha Grebinski. This is Saskatoon Morning on 94.1 FM. Well, we continue our conversation with 3 of the candidates this morning, Don Acheson, Charlie Clark, and Rob Norris. This half hour, we talk about transportation and property taxes. Where do each stand on the issues? We'll find out just ahead here on Saskatoon Morning. Right now, let's check in with Danny Kerslake. Danny, what's making news today?
Saskatchewan has now recorded 5 straight days of new COVID-19 cases with increases of more than 70. There are 74 new cases in the province at last report, as our active case load has now climbed to 858. This city is responsible for 34% of those cases. Sask Polytechnic says it's still working with outside experts and police after a cybersecurity attack. The school reported the attack yesterday and canceled classes until Thursday as a result, but a number of programs and systems have since been restored.
In the weather, right now it is -1, partly cloudy, a wind chill making it feel like -5. Our high today, 15, and so we're seeing those double digits in the mid-teens again. Mostly sunny today, an overnight low of 2 degrees. The nice weather continues. Wednesday, sunshine, a high of 15. Thursday, 14 with a mix of sun and cloud, and then it drops. Friday, a high of 2 degrees with cloud cover, and we could see some snow this weekend. Environment Canada calling for snow, and temperatures on the minus side, around -4 on Saturday, -8 is the high on Sunday. So again, -1 right now, partly cloudy, but it should be a beautiful day with that high of 15 degrees and lots of sunshine in the forecast. Danny, how's traffic?
A little slow, 33rd and Idlewild and Circle near 22nd, but all in all, looking pretty good. Traffic reports to 306-956-7444.
Thanks, Danny. This is Saskatoon Morning on CBC Radio 1, 94.1 FM. The time now is 12 minutes after 8. Well, with us this morning is Don Acheson, Charlie Clark, and Rob Norris. We are live from Glass and Lumber event venue on 20th Street. This forum is a chance to dig deep into issues that matter to all of us, and the format we've been following is this. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the first question uninterrupted, followed by a brief Q&A. It's important to note, yet again, that this is not a debate. It's meant to be a conversation. And so let's get to our next topic. How we get around this city is important. Whether you drive, walk, bike, or take the bus, the infrastructure to support our commutes is vital. Construction on a bus rapid transit route is to begin in 2022. The full line expected to launch in 2025. The estimated price tag is $120 million. A good chunk of that will be covered by provincial and federal money. At the same time, bike lanes remain a contentious topic in our city. So how do you effectively split the transportation budget between roads, bridges, bike lanes, and buses? That is a key query in this campaign. And so our question for you this morning is this. Do you support the rapid transit system that the city has planned for 2025? Mr. Norris, we will start with you, and you have 1 minute.
You know, what we've seen over the course of COVID is ridership on buses plummeted 80%. It's fluctuated a little bit. Now's the time to press pause on the BRT. It's really important that that we really take some time to measure what's going on. It's not just Saskatoon, it's cities around the world. This is vitally important, for the safety of ridership for our drivers, but it's also, again, about that sense of prudent stewardship. So pause the BRT. That's going to be really, really important for us. Let's understand what the effects of COVID are. Even some of the consequences regarding the BRT, I don't think they were really addressed at an engineering level. The notion that dozens of buses a day running down Broadway, we'd like to see the engineering reports for that. Broadway was closed for the better part of summer a couple of years ago. What we can't do is literally have the tar pounded out of Broadway because it's not suitable for the BRT route. Serious questions, especially given COVID. Okay,
Mr. Norris, thank you. Mr. Atchison, do you support the rapid transit system that the city has planned for 2025?
Not at all. I support a high-frequency bus service instead and a first and last mile. They've done it in other communities, and I think it could be tremendously successful in Saskatoon. The notion that it's going to be $120 million is totally inaccurate. Go to Mississauga News, you'll find that it's $528 million. London, Ontario was $500 million. They talk about, while they bought land in London, Ontario, well, you have overpasses and that here. On top of bus rapid transit, it's supposed to get to the other point quicker than in your vehicle. And the reports point out already that it's going to take at least 5 minutes longer to get from downtown to your home at this time. People aren't going to take it. It's 20th century technology in the 21st century. We haven't even talked about autonomous vehicles and that, and how that's going to affect things. The pandemic, how's that going to change people? Are people going to be working from home instead? These are all things that need to be addressed, and I think going to a high-frequency bus service using first and last mile is the answer in the end for all of us.
Okay, Mr. Clark, do you support the rapid transit system that the city has planned for 2025?
Yeah, and first of all, I've heard Mr. Atchison as mayor many times say, never let the facts get in the way of a good story. And I think in this case, we need to be really clear that the transit systems that have been proposed in London and cities in Ontario are very different than what is being talked about here. Every study, every estimate for ours has been $120 to $150 million. And so let's talk about and focus on the facts. This is one of the projects that will help stimulate jobs in our community, and we don't want to leave federal and provincial money on the table by not making progress on BRT. Our service provided over 4 million rides in 2019. Service went up by 12%, and as the city grows, we're not going to be able to expand 8th Street, 22nd Street, Attridge Drive to add more vehicle lanes. We need to move people more efficiently. We need to get people working, and we need to make it so that single moms taking their kids to daycare and going to work have better service to get where they need to go and not leave them behind.
Mr. Clark, thank you. Mr. Norris, some follow-up questions. If not BRT, what is your plan for public transportation?
Yeah, right now, given COVID, safe, reliable busing. I was just downtown speaking with some seniors, and they have some very real concerns. Can they have greater, access and easier access to busing? And so, safe and reliable. We need to make sure that predictability, safety, reliability, the things that our bus service has been known for, well, really for more than a century, continue to be the key themes. When we start talking about working our way out of COVID, we can't take our eye off what's going on. Rising numbers in Saskatoon today mean we need to focus safe, reliable transit, especially for those that need it most.
What's your long-term vision, though? Where do you see this city, and how do you see us getting around a few years from now, even?
Well, I think what's going to be increasingly important is that we're going to have to see a transportation network that it does not rely on the BRT. The BRT is premised on a number of principles, and some of those principles just simply are not going to work because there are private businesses and private landowners that are going to be profoundly affected. Mr. Clark's cost estimate is not accurate on this. We need a new system. We need to go back to the drawing board. This is not it. This is not sustainable stewardship.
Mr. Clark, are you concerned at all that the price tag attached to BRT could increase over time and that the burden could be placed on taxpayers?
This is something that happens with projects, but I think we again need to talk in the realm of reality. We're talking about a $120 to $150 million plan, not $500 million. It will happen in phases. There is room to adapt to some of the issues that happen with COVID. But if we don't make progress in moving forward and leveraging some of those federal dollars into our community, people who say they want to see a downtown arena, for example, and a downtown entertainment district, we need to plan for the future. We will not be able to have enough parking and we certainly don't want to build future facilities surrounded by a sea of parking. We need to have a joint strategy that moves people more efficiently, that creates better service into and out of the downtown, and that provides better service to those people who need it. The drivers want this in our community, that we've been talking about their needs, but also, like I say, the single moms and the people who rely on transit to get to work every day. For me, I think it's important we build a city for everyone, and we don't leave money on the table and miss the chance to create jobs.
Mr. Atchison, what is your long-term vision when it comes to transportation for the city, and does any of it include bike lanes?
Well, first of all, let's go back to the transit end of it, first of all, because it was interesting. We just heard about phasing in. So this is the first phase at $150 million. They haven't talked about taking the 2 lanes off of the Broadway Bridge, haven't spoken about taking 2 lanes off the University Bridge. And if they do that, the study is already in place that says that you have to build a bridge on 33rd Street. So the people, for example, that live in City Park, North City Park right now, need to be aware that there will be a bridge over there to take the excess traffic from the University Bridge at that particular point in time.
That's part of the BRT plan?
That's all part of the BRT plan, long-term plan. Yes, it is, because all you have to do is that it had come to council, and that is part of the program. The other part is putting on Broadway Avenue is absolutely the wrong place. Bus rapid transit needs to go all the way down 8th Street, down Senator Sitbuckle Bridge, down 1st Avenue is where it needs to go. We need to let the merchants in that on Broadway Avenue have the parking that they require at this particular point in time.
I want to give everyone a chance to just comment quickly on bike lanes. You've only got about 10 seconds each, but is that part of how important are bike lanes when it comes to developing a transportation plan in Saskatoon?
Okay,
just 10 seconds.
Quickly, not on 3rd Avenue. They're going to be voting in January, February, or March on putting bike lanes on 3rd Avenue. We need to have an active transportation corridor that goes all the way from the southeast end of the city over to Highway 7 and 14 is what we need to do. That people can either ride a bike, they can walk, they can do lots of other things, and I think that's a green corridor that we should be having throughout the entire city.
Okay, Mr. Clark, yes or no to bike lanes?
There was no plans to take away lanes on Broadway, and there's no plans to take lanes away on the University. These had been debated extensively. We built successful active transportation and bike lanes on Victoria Avenue that nobody has complained about, as well as into new neighborhoods and new areas. I believe there's still a need to make sure that people can get around safely by walking, bicycle, vehicle, and all modes, but we can do it better than what we've done in the past.
Mr. Norris, bike lanes, are they part of the transportation strategy if you were to become mayor?
Almost 10% unemployment. $15 million deficit, $350 million. We've spent a disproportionate amount of time and money on bike lanes. I'm not going to be touching bike lanes as we address the COVID crisis and our economic recovery. The answer is this is not a priority right now.
How much are bike lanes when you look at an entire transportation budget? What percentage would go to bike lanes? How big of an expense are they?
We've seen millions of dollars spent on bike lanes only to see really citizen dissatisfaction increase.
The time now is 22 minutes after 8. You are listening to a special edition of Saskatoon Morning.
You're listening to Saskatoon Morning and our special coverage of Race for Mayor. You can listen to us on 94.1 FM in Saskatoon. Take us on the road by downloading the CBC Listen app or watch it all on Facebook. We're streaming live on CBC Saskatoon's Facebook page. Stick around, there's more of our conversation with the candidates still to come.
Well, all of you have made promises when it comes to property taxes, and so our question on this one is simple. What do you plan to do with property taxes? And Mr. Clark, we will let you start. You have 1 minute.
This morning I came across a quote by American economist Thomas Sowell that says, when you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. When it comes to property taxes, the truth is budgeting is tough. You have to make hard decisions, and anybody who's saying and promising a 1% or a 0% property tax increase needs to come up with $7 million or $9 million of reductions in service, or they are deferring those costs onto 2022 and creating a nightmare scenario for budgeting 2022, which is outside of the election promise cycle here. I have never promised something that I can't deliver on when it comes to property taxes. I've told everybody strategies that we can continue to do to bring tax increases down, but those who are promising these, I have not heard yet an actual responsible approach to bringing the property taxes down to 0 or 1%, including what would be cut to do it, and that's what citizens need to hear.
Mr. Clark, thank you. Mr. Atchison, what do you plan to do with property taxes?
Well, no increase in 2021. We have a $1.234 billion budget right now for the city of Saskatoon. We're going to defer the landfill. It's not going anywhere. Last time I figured it out. So we're not going to put any funding aside for that for the upcoming year. The next part is the environmental program at $19 billion, at 6.1. We're not going to be doing that. The bus rapid transit is also another area. And the other area that we can do are the capital reserves. We don't have to fulfill all the obligations in those particular areas. We need to take a pause here. Just because the city has a monopoly and they call themselves a government doesn't give them the right just to carry on with doing what they want to do. Hard and difficult decisions have to be made, and it's easy just to pass the buck and increase taxes. Businesses are out there wondering how they're going to stay in business, how they're going to keep their people employed. Families are wondering how they're going to make their mortgage payments, how they're going to deal with all their other obligations for their families right now. The city is no different than anyone else. They have to make sure that they live within their means, and that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Atchison, thank you. Mr. Norris, what do you plan to do with property taxes? You have 1 minute.
The first thing we're going to have to do is we got to get out of this straitjacket that the current mayor and council have put us in of 2-year budget cycles. We're in the midst of a pandemic. We need to go back to annual budgets. What I'm focusing on is a 1% property tax increase instead of the 3.7 and 3.9%. There are savings that we can find in fuel. We can find savings from delaying and pressing pause on BRT. And I'm the only candidate that's saying, I actually feel people's pains, and that is I'm willing to see the mayor's salary reduced by 10%, the chief of staff's salary reduced by 10%, the communications budget in the mayor's office reduced by 10%, leading by example, because we know that families are struggling, simply struggling to make it today.
Mr. Norris, thank you. You're listening to our conversation with the 3 candidates we have with us today, Don Atchison, Charlie Clark, and Rob Norris. We're at 26 minutes now after 8 o'clock. We are almost out of time, and so we're going to give each candidate an opportunity to share some closing remarks. And again, you'll have 1 minute for each of this, for each of you, 1 minute to share closing remarks. And we're going to go in alphabetical order, just as we started. And so, Don Atchison, I will give you the opportunity, 1 minute, to share some closing remarks.
Thank you ever so much. First of all, I love this city. I have a real passion for this city. There is so much more that we can do, have a vision for our community for the future. And this election that's happening right now isn't just about the next 4 years. This is about the next quarter century, because decisions that are going to be made over the next 4 years are going to impact us for that length of period of time. The next thing is we need to be looking at safety and security in our community. People want safe communities to live in. And when will our community be safe? Is when any mother or any father can take their children out onto the street anywhere in our community and feel safe. Housing is another one. Attainable, affordable housing is absolutely critical. I want us to get into more of these tiny homes, that sort of thing. I want everyone to have a safe and secure place to live in. People are looking for certainty and security in their homes, hope and opportunity. These are all things that we want. And I can tell you right now that the other thing that we need to do is looking at jobs in our community. And the other part is I looked at Cameco yesterday when they were in fact being dealt with the Supreme Court of Canada. We have to make sure that we speak up for them too.
Mr. Atchison, thank you. Mr. Clark. Clark, 1 minute for closing remarks.
Thank you, Leisha, and thanks to CBC for this forum. It's our last one, and so I want to say that we live in an absolutely amazing city, and we're going through a very challenging time. The election question for citizens right now is, who do you want to provide leadership to help us, guide us through this pandemic, and to make sure that we can come out even stronger on the other side? The leadership I offer is a collaborative approach that sees the best in people and that isn't afraid to bring people from different points of view together to solve problems. That's what I've been doing in terms of building the economic growth strategy. That is what I've been doing to build the Sawaito 10 partnership and come up with a paradigm-shifting way of addressing community safety. That's how we've built more facilities in the last year to bring quality of life in the last term for families like Merlis Belcher Place, Gordie House Sports Complex, Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan, the Ramey Modern. We can build a strong future here. I believe in our capacity as a city to have a great future and come out of the pandemic stronger. Okay. But we have to work together and see the best in each other.
Mr. Clark, thank you. Mr. Norris, 1 minute for closing remarks.
Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. Canada's hometown. You know, we know how valuable and vital this city is, not just simply to the province, but to the entire country. I'm working towards a safer Saskatoon. Record murders, record arson. That's not reflective of our community. I'm working for not simply a safer, but a more affordable Saskatoon. Property taxes at 1%, reliable for the city and affordable for families. A more prosperous Saskatoon. What do the next generation of jobs look like? We haven't spent enough time talking about why we're not doing better when it comes to agriculture and agri-food. What about being Canada's energy capital for research? It's worth thousands of jobs and real opportunity, and a more welcoming Saskatoon. I'm the only candidate that's spoken up on behalf of reaching out and taking advantage of a municipal immigrant nominee program. This is about helping to shape Saskatchewan and Saskatoon.
Mr. Norris, thank you so much. Thank you to all three of you, Don Atchison, Charlie Clark, Rob Norris. You've been listening to a special edition of Saskatoon Morning. If you're just tuning in and you missed the conversation, don't worry. It will be available on our website at cbc.ca/Saskatoon, along with 3 interviews we did yesterday with candidates Mark Zilke, Carrie Tarasoff, and Zubair Sheikh. The time now is 8:30. Danny Kerslake is here with the news.
Thank you, Leisha, and good morning. We are less than a week away now from voting for a new mayor. If you didn't know where the candidates stand, we hope you do now.